In this series, we're going to take a look at some iconic and maybe not so iconic video games and go over the mechanics, graphics, story, and determine if this game still holds up to this day or deserves a proper remake. My name is C4 Sages, and this is Should It Be Remade? To start the series, we're going to take a look at a game that has been rumored to make a return to modern hardware with modern graphics for quite some time. I'm talking about one of the greatest video games of all time, Metal Gear Solid. So, get your rations and drinks ready because we're about to head back and see if this game is worthy of a remake. Metal Gear Solid is a stealth game developed by industry favorite Konami. See what I did there? And released for the original PlayStation on September 3rd, 1998 in Japan, and then later in that fall for North America. Damn, I feel old. It was directed, produced, and written by the famous Hideo Kojima, and follows the MSX2 video games Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which Kojima also worked on. And as most of you know who are watching this video, you control iconic badass Solid Snake, a soldier who infiltrates a nuclear weapons facility, or Shadow Moses, to neutralize the terrorist threat from Foxhound, a renegade special forces unit. Snake must liberate hostages and stop the terrorists from launching a nuclear strike. Cinematic cutscenes were rendered using the in-game engine and graphics, and the voice acting is still considered to be one of the most iconic performances in video game history. So let's talk about it. Does Metal Gear Solid deserve to be remade? Well, listen, I know what most of you are going to scream at the video and basically say, C4, there is a Metal Gear Solid remake already. It's called Metal Gear Solid Twin... Yes, I know there is technically a remake that came out on the GameCube called Metal Gear Solid the Twin Snakes. I know. And while that game is a remade version of the game that we're talking about today, I want to focus more on the original Metal Gear Solid and really see if that game still holds up today, or if it truly does deserve, well, another remake. So, let's talk about graphics. Nearly every object in Metal Gear Solid, including Snake, is polygonal, which at the time was the PlayStation stamp on modern graphics of the 90s, with nearly all of their 3D games being in polygons. However, Hideo Kojima and the original team kept the polygon count low and leaned on a more creative use of textures and rendering perspective. Thanks to these thoughtful techniques, Metal Gear Solid shows very few clipping errors, and the characters move rather smoothly. With that being said, the quality of the faces during the in-game cutscenes or while moving around is pretty rough by today's standards. There is something about that PS1 graphical charm that keeps it feeling nostalgic. Metal Gear Solid pushed the limits, and it does not have anything to do with graphics, but instead it depends on a pure creativity, the pure genius of Hideo Kojima and the original Metal Gear Solid team. The game had a number of points in the story where even something like the memory card or the controllers utilized creatively to enhance the game experience or serve as what's called, and I'll say it infamously, an Easter egg. On top of the already impressive game engine, the attention to detail, considering the technical limitations at the time, is pretty freaking astounding. As you're walking around a snowy field, Snake makes footprints in the snow that would eventually get covered up by snowfall over time. You can identify guards and other characters by their breath in the cold air. Water effects are accurate, light sourcing is pretty freaking impressive, and the textures are, well, solid. And again, when compared to modern day graphics, it's definitely not even close. However, if you go back in time, Metal Gear Solid 1 released in the prime years of the original PS1, which at the time was arguably the best system, compared to systems like the Super NES, the Nintendo 64, and even the Sega Saturn. Game discs could hold so much more information compared to a cartridge, which makes you wonder, Why no Metal Gear Solid on a system like, let's say, the Dreamcast? I mean, the Dreamcast, in terms of its visuals, you would argue that it was even more impressive than the original PlayStation. But Metal Gear Solid was a console exclusive to the original PS1 and did not get any ports of the game until the PC version of Metal Gear Solid was released in North America, Europe, and Asia in the early 2000s. Video game exclusivity was not as mentioned and widely known in the public as it is now, which makes you wonder, what if a game like Metal Gear Solid was released on more consoles? We may never know. So, let's talk about gameplay. Metal Gear Solid paved the way for the stealth action genre by using both creative and innovative ideas in a very simple but clever way. You navigate through Shadow Moses with Solid Snake, and your main stealth objective obviously is to not be seen or detected by enemy soldiers, or as Liquid Snake likes to call them, the Genome Soldiers. That was my impression of Liquid Snake. Anywho, when Snake moves into the enemy's field of vision, he sets off what's called as an alert mode, or as most of you know, that makes enemies blow you the fuck up with what seems like an infinite rounds of bullets and tyranny and just pure hate and oh god! Once the timer is done, you go into invasion mode, and you as the player must wait until the counter reaches 0. And then you're back to choking enemies again, which I must say I absolutely love. And that's what I absolutely love about Metal Gear's gameplay. There's just so much. You can perform techniques which makes use of Snake's abilities and the environment, such as crawling under objects, freaking boxes as cover, boxes, ducking and hiding around walls and making noise to distract enemies, or in my case, making a freaking beat with my knuckles. An on-screen radar that shows the location of nearby enemies and their field of vision. It's absolutely amazing. Snake can also make use of many different items and gadgets. Some in particular are ones like the infrared goggles, his trusty SIGs,
Cigarettes? How are those going to help you?
You never know.
and ketchup. Yeah, that's right. Ketchup. And the game makes it where you can totally go on what's called a pacifist run, meaning that if you wanted to play the game and not kill anyone, you could totally do that. For the most part, compared to its previous games, Metal Gear Solid is still played primarily from an overhead. The camera angle does change during certain situations, such as a corner view when Snake flattens himself to a wall, or into first person when crawling under tight spaces, or when equipping certain items such as the binoculars or the famous sniper known as the PSG-1. The player can also use the first person view while remaining idle to look around Snake's surroundings to see what's ahead of him. Unfortunately, you cannot move around in the first person perspective with most of your weapons, which for most of the game makes it pretty weird because you can't go for the simple headshot or shoot a particular target in the face or in its limbs. The first person component would be advanced in later games where the player could use almost any weapon and aim from a first person perspective. Progress is punctuated by cutscenes and the all-popular codec calls, as well as encounters with bosses. To progress, players must discover the weaknesses of each boss and essentially whoop their ass. Play controls and strategies can also be accessed via the codec radio, where advice is delivered from Snake's support team. For example, the support team may chastise Snake for not saving his progress often enough, or explain his combat moves in terms of which buttons to press on the gamepad. I mean, think about that for a second. For such an older game, Hideo Kojima and his team made it where the game triggered certain points of dialogue that reminded you to freaking save, because deep down, they knew you were not a badass and you were probably gonna get your ass kicked by the freaking ninja. Because I did. Several times. On top of that, there's also a VR training mode in which the player can test out their snaky sneaking skills. Try to say that 3 times, kids. In a series of artificially constructed environments. This mode is divided into 3 main categories: practice, time attack, and gun shooting, each consisting of 10 stages. After completing all 30 stages, a survival mission is unlocked in which the player must sneak their way through 10 consecutive stages under a 7-minute limit. Hot damn! And I can't stress enough just how awesome and amazing the boss fights are in Metal Gear Solid 1. I mean, some of the most unforgettable bosses you can think of in any video game. From fighting people like Ocelot to fighting a freaking ninja, to even finding out that you're a twin and you have to fight your brother, and your freaking evil brother is inside of the thing that you have to destroy, and you're freaking fighting this walking battle tank. I mean, Metal Gear Solid definitely showed just how superior at the time they were when it came to fighting bosses and making them freaking epic. Overall, Metal Gear Solid's gameplay features so much content and attention to detail that you could really tell that a lot of love was put into the game. Metal Gear Solid's gameplay to me still stands as one of the best of all time. Now, let's talk about the story. I mean, what can I say that hasn't been said already? It's freaking awesome. Embedded with some of the greatest voice acting of all time and an unforgettable story. To say that Metal Gear Solid's story is truly impeccable is quite an understatement. From unforgettable characters, to the heartwarming and even heartbreaking moments about trust and betrayal.
So patriotism is your excuse for circumventing the Constitution?
Please, Snake, just stop them.
Why should I?
Because you're the only one who can.
In that case, tell me the truth about this new type of nuclear warhead.
I told you before, I don't know the details.
I don't believe you. If the situation is so serious, why don't you give in to their demands? Let them have Big Boss's remains.
You see,
Or is there some reason that you can't do that? Something you haven't told me about?
Publicly, the president has been very vocal in his opposition to eugenics experiments. We don't want the existence of the Genome Army to go public.
And that's the only reason? Huh. Hell with you.
Metal Gear paved the way for voice acting in video games that still holds up to this day, and to me is considered the greatest acting performance in video game history. So, does Metal Gear Solid deserve a remake? Well, my answer is yes. The reason I believe that Metal Gear Solid deserves a remake is because we haven't gotten a really good Metal Gear Solid game in quite a long time. The last game that released wasn't really a Metal Gear Solid game, and no, I refuse to say what it's called because I fear that if I were to,
I'd probably go into limbo.
And although Metal Gear Solid 5 was a really good sort of finish to the Metal Gear Solid series, it sort of fell short in terms of its overall story, though the gameplay component is absolutely amazing. Story-wise, it just fell short. With that being said, though the original Metal Gear Solid did get a remake back in 2004, Twin Snakes didn't feel like a Metal Gear Solid 1 remake, and did not hit me like the original game did. From the unfortunate music changes to a toned down and at times cringy moments, I feel that Metal Gear Solid deserves to be remade once again. One thing that I would be curious about is the direction of the story and the changes in character lines, and who would be willing to take on this project. Will Metal Gear Solid Remake go the FF7 remake direction and make story changes and gameplay elements different? Or will it go the Demon's Souls route and just make a graphical overhaul while keeping the gameplay, story, and original pieces of dialogue the same? My hope is that if Metal Gear Solid ever becomes a reality, I would personally want a company like Bluepoint to make a clear graphical and gameplay change, while keeping the original voice actors, dialogue, and direction of the game the same. Metal Gear Solid is a timeless classic, and to see it come back in a modern day engine with different lines and a different direction would be really weird and disappointing to see. With that being said, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and bell button. And if you would like to see more videos like these, feel free to let me know in the comments section to make any recommendations for the future. Anyways, my name is C4 Sages, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.